Hey buddy, watch this.
Hello, Regis Kilbin is the name, and Heroes of the Storm is the game, and these are my first impressions of Varian Rin, the brand new hero. And here's the Storm. He just hit the PTR. This is literally the first time I've taken him out for a spin, so I'm going to be learning all about this guy right alongside you guys. I am going in totally blind, but hopefully as we make our way through this video, we'll learn a little bit about Varian's trait, his abilities, his talents, and perhaps even how to play this guy. So I hope it's a productive experience exploring this seemingly awesome new hero. So really all I know about this is based on what was presented at BlizzCon, and that's that Varian functions essentially both as an assassin and as a warrior. So depending upon sort of the talents you take, he can be a flex type position for that double warrior meta, or if you need the assassin, he can swing that way as well. So let's go ahead and break down the character, starting off with his health pool and his mana. Health, not really high for a warrior, and in fact, probably just about average for a melee assassin, so maybe this health will go up if he's a warrior. I don't know how that works exactly just yet, but not the biggest health pool I've ever seen, so that could be an issue. And it's interesting he uses mana despite being sort of the prototypical warrior class from World of Warcraft who uses rage, so that's an interesting choice, but normal mana cost, normal mana pool, essentially. So the trait on Varian is Heroic Strike, 18-second cooldown. Every 18 seconds, Varian's next basic attack deals bonus damage of 278, and basic attacks reduce this cooldown by 2 seconds. So we can probably see that in action a little bit. We already saw one go through, and it looks like the next one's going to proc soon. Yeah, so hits for 451. The normal attack doesn't do a lot. 173 is not insane. Attack speed's pretty high, though. And this is going to go off relatively often, which is nice. And it's usually going to open a fight, too, right? So that nice burst right at the beginning and probably halfway through some sort of team engagement. So not a bad little trait, little extra damage. And burst damage is typically the best kind of extra damage. So the rest of the abilities, we've got Lion's Fang. 8-second cooldown. Moderate mana cost. Pretty short cooldown. Create a shockwave that travels in a straight line, dealing 329 damage and slowing enemies by 30%. Wow, that's a long range ability. Cool. So a nice little slow. 30% slow is enough to gain ground. Let's go ahead and turn cooldowns off. So that's going to be decent little crowd control, enemy manipulation, and just a nice poke tool, it looks like, since it's pretty short cooldown and relatively cheap, and does a fair bit of damage. 329 is not going to slaughter anybody, of course, but it's enough to matter. There's also the W parry. 15 mana, so really cheap. Charges are on a 10-second cooldown, but you get 2, it looks like, so roughly every 5 seconds or so. Could use one. Parry all incoming basic attacks for 1.25 seconds, reducing their damage by 100%. So it's a super block, basically, an active super block. So in dueling situations, that's going to be pretty insane against some heroes. 1.25 seconds, though, is a rather short duration, right? Just because, I mean, the attack cycles on many heroes means that's probably only ever 2 attacks. But that's really good against heroes with rapid attack speeds, I guess. Since, you know, you're going to be shutting out everything they do for that full durability, or for full duration, I should say. So that's pretty cool. That certainly feels more like a warrior survivability option. I mean, assassins, of course, need some survivability too, so either way, I like that. And then there's also E, Charge, so another prototypical warrior ability. Charge to the target enemy, dealing 110 damage and slowing them by 75% for 1 second. That is an awesome slow. But this has a pretty long cooldown at 16 seconds. And the range is really not that long. It's sort of a mid-range charge. But, you know, that's between your Lion's Fang to slow and perhaps close just enough ground to initiate with your E. So say you come up, they're running away. You can get this off to slow them, and then this gives you enough to complete the E as well. So that's probably how your little combo works. And you've got your W for dueling, right? But right now, he doesn't do a ton of damage or have a lot of like burst damage options. So I don't feel like he could secure a ton of kills just yet. But I like Charge quite a bit. That's awesome. Just a nice gap closer, and a 75% slow is very tough. That's very significant. So that's going to make big impact in fights and help set up kills for sure, which is nice. Now I will say he's not a warrior just yet, but there's no peel in this kit, so I don't know how he's going to defend his teammates. I mean, slows are very indirect peels at the very best. So those are the abilities. Let's go ahead and jump right into the talents, starting off level 1, of course, and Lion's Maw upgrade here. I think it was called Lion's Fang. So Lion's Maw. Every time Lion's Fang hits a hero, increases damage by 4, up to 120. After 30 heroes, slow is increased to 40%, and its duration is increased to 2 seconds. So 10% boost on the, or actually really a 33% increase, relative increase on the slow, and actually a 33% relative increase on the duration of the slow as well. So pretty big increase on the slow, which is nice. And of course the damage goes up substantially as well. Actually nearly 33%, but a little better even, 40% or so. That's nice, and I don't think it's going to be hard to hit 30 heroes, honestly. This has got a short cooldown and a really long range, so you're going to be able to fire these off pretty often. This seems like a nice base talent to me. There's also Overpower. When you parry a hero's basic attack, Heroic Strike's cooldown is refreshed. It can only occur once per cast. So when you're dueling somebody and you hit the parry and you block that attack, then Heroic Strike activates immediately. But that can only happen once per parry, seemingly. That's not bad at all. That's going to make you much better in dueling scenarios for sure. One-on-one, or team fights as well, of course. So sort of a counter option if you're getting focused down a lot, which is nice. And then finally there's the High King's Quest. Oh, man, there's a lot of pieces to this. Quest: hit 50 heroes with basic attacks, participate in 5 hero takedowns, and gather 20 regen globes. And at that point, actually no, it looks like anytime you complete one of those quests, it grants you 10 base attack damage. Completing all 3 grants an additional 30 base attack damage, so you'd get 60 additional attack damage per auto attack. So that's okay, I think. That's like sustained damage increase. His attack speed is pretty high, so it is going to add up relatively quickly over time. This is kind of a fancy seasoned marksman stack builder type thing. But you know, he is a melee auto attacker, so it's not always like you're going to just be taking pot shots with auto attacks like somebody like Raynor might, for instance. And seasoned marksman really shines on him because he's just always able to auto attack from such a far distance that poke really excels. Melee auto attackers have a much harder time utilizing, in my experience, those same kinds of buffs. So as good as this is, I don't know that it's necessarily better than Lion's Maw. Probably just depends on the composition of the enemy team and your own skill and capability. But these each seem fine. Overpower also seems decent to me. So honestly, all 3 of these probably are playable, just depending on personal preference. And I'm sure as time passes and we see Varian in some real games, some of these will start to move to the top as the strongest win rate talents, and that'll help guide our decisions. For now, I'm just going to take Lion's Maw. Moving on to level 4, we have Shield Wall. Parry now grants Protected, preventing all incoming damage for the duration. Okay, so that's insane. So it's just a 1.25 second invulnerability now. That's really good. Sort of a Medivh shield. Every 10 seconds you get a new one. So that's going to make you very, very tanky, but not really just tanky. It's also going to make you good as an assassin, just because you won't be able to be punished if you really commit to a dive. You'll have some immunity and impunity in your attacking, which is cool. So Shield Wall seems insanely good. There's also Warbringer. Charge now stuns the target for 1 second instead of slowing them, and its cooldown is reduced by 10 seconds. Okay, that also seems insane. So stuns, of course, are amazing. Incredibly useful in Here's the Storm. And a 16-second cooldown is cut to a 6-second cooldown, so you can close gaps and stun people every 6 seconds. That's nuts, guys. That's really, really good. And frankly, that's good as a tank too, just because it's a form of peel and an initiate. Like, there's a lot of reasons this is good as a tank, not just an assassin. So frankly, both of these seem good in both roles. Shield Wall is probably theoretically designed as the tank option, or with the tank option in mind. Warbringer was probably thinking, Blizzard was probably thinking more along the assassin line, but frankly, they both work in both contexts, in my opinion. But I don't know, I have a feeling Warbringer is just the more active and decisive of the two, so it's probably going to take the edge on popularity and win rate. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Warbringer here. Moving on to level 7, it's Live by the Sword. Increase the duration of parry by 20%. So that's already really good with Shield Wall, right? If you go Shield Wall, this one makes a ton of sense. If you block at least 2 hero basic attacks with a single parry, its cooldown is reduced by 3 seconds. Yeah, so that makes it even better. Like, stacking parry could be nuts with Shield Wall, because it's not just an auto attack block, but it's just a total damage negation, and it's every 7 seconds for a charge, because it's a reduction of 3 seconds, so it happens even more often. Really strong if you're looking for like a tank, total defensive, hunker down shield build. And there's also Second Wind. Basic attacks heal Varian for 1% of his maximum health, and while below 50% health, they also heal him for 50% of the damage dealt. That's cool. It's sort of a, last ditch effort survivability type talent. Helps top you off, but also helps you survive a little longer in the throes of battle if you're dying. Sort of a Artanis style of play maybe, but awfully, not nearly as good, I'd guess. Awfully weaker, I should say. So, I don't know. I don't really like this that much. I think it rewards playing from behind too much, and probably just doesn't make as big of an impact as you might think based on the numbers immediately. There's also Victory Rush. Every 60 seconds, Varian's next basic attack will heal him for 877 health. When a nearby enemy minion dies, the cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. Huh. Well, that's kind of cool. So, if killing 4 minions, the way I'm reading this, killing 4 minions means you get to Victory Rush like every 4 minions that died. Which, is like a minion wave. You could do it twice, essentially, really fast. So you could heal for like 1,800 health, which is, half of his health nearly. But, every one of these is still a 25% heal, essentially. That's pretty big heal. It's pretty cool. It rewards laning and split soaking. And certain maps, this actually seems decent. It doesn't have the team fight, probably, applications of Live by the Sword. But as a map component, as a map emphasis, Victory Rush makes a little more sense to me. So who knows? These are all kind of accomplishing the same sort of goal, healing him or reducing damage. Live by the Sword is probably going to take the edge, though, in my mind. It just seems awfully good. Because really, team fights are what Heroes of the Storm ultimately is going to be about for most players and most skill brackets, and I think Live by the Sword encourages that the best. So level 10, it looks like we have 3 heroic options, which is awesome. Actually, 2 active heroics and 1 passive, it seems. Up first is Taunt, classic World of Warcraft warrior ability, of course. 25-second cooldown, 40 mana. Force the target here to attack Varian for 1.25 seconds. That's awesome. That's not something we've seen in Heroes just yet. But making someone lose control of their character is really good, because that's like the ultimate peel ability. This whole time I've been talking about, well, he doesn't really have a lot of peel. But actually with Warbringer and Taunt, he has a ton of peel. So you can force pretty much everything through you. And then as they're attacking you, you can cast parry and just negate all that damage, which is really cool. That's a fun mechanic. It's like the tank dream, right? This is, I actually play a warrior in World of Warcraft, and it's clear that this is the ultimate warrior fantasy here for Varian. So, Taunt also seemingly has passive effects, which is awesome. Your maximum health is increased by 50%, so that's a really big increase. And of course, your attack speed is reduced by 25%, so you can't pump out quite as much damage, but you do get more health. I just want to see what this health total goes to. So suddenly 6,000 and he gains a shield. That's awesome. I actually don't think the shield looks that cool, if I'm being totally honest with you. It's kind of bland. It matches his shoulder pad, obviously, but not the most exciting shield I've ever seen. But still, now 6k health at level 20, which is comparable to many tanks. Puts him in a good spot for tanking, I think. So let's go ahead and look at the rest of these heroics. We'll just grab some random talents. And we've got Colossus Smash. Go to warrior ability right now in WoW. It's a 20-second cooldown. So about the same, basically, on the cooldowns here. It smashes a target enemy, dealing 410 damage and making them vulnerable for 3 seconds. So that's pretty good. Vulnerable abilities are really powerful in an organized setting. If your team is really on point and focusing down targets, that can be really, really, really strong. And even if it's not just by yourself, you can often utilize vulnerabilities pretty well if you time your abilities right and pick the right targets. So either way, that's going to be strong. It also has the passive effect of base tech damage increased by 75%, which is pretty huge. And your maximum health reduced by 10%. So sort of the opposite of taunt, obviously. I want to see the damage numbers here. We're hitting for 173 normally. And then we grab Colossus Smash, and we're hitting for 302. Also, some talent I grabbed is making my heroic strikes go through all the time. What is doing that? It's kind of crazy. Is that this? He's pumping out a ton of damage when you do this. Jeez. If you can stay on your target, look at all this damage I'm hitting for. It's really big numbers, guys. Oh, I know why, because cooldowns are on. That's why. But still, I mean, look at this. It's crazy. It's still activating really quickly. Just because the normal auto attack thing is... This is a scary build. I like it, because you're going to be doing E's to close gaps too, and stunning people, and making sure all this stuff goes off, and hitting your slow, and like Colossus Smash really hurts. So 726 every once in a while is nasty. So that's pretty cool. I mean, as much as I want to play like the Taunt Warrior, this does seem indeed quite viable. So let's reset talents again and see this passive one, Twin Blades of Fury. It looks like he's going to be a Fury Warrior with a dual wield. Basic attacks reduce heroic strikes cooldown by 9 seconds. What's this? Wow, that's nuts, because it's only 18 seconds to start with, so that's cuts it in half. And increase Varian's movement speed by 30% for 2 seconds. So there's like 3 ways to play this guy at level 10. That's crazy. That's so awesome. Oh, wow. Yeah, they go off really fast. That's nuts. It's like wind chimes going off. I hope you guys can hear the sound. It's... Wow. And look, he's moving quickly too, so he's just going to get on people and just blow them up with tons of tiny attacks. Because look, this synergizes so well with High King's Quest, right? Because this makes it seem like you get 30 base attack damage on each of these, or 60 total. It's going to make those very strong. Plus, Warbringer is a great way to close gaps. Like, man. Basic attacks healing too with Second Wind. He's just going to be able to get on there and go crazy. I really like that. I'm curious to see if this holds up compared to the more active heroics. All 3 of these seem very good to me, though, just depending on your playstyle and team composition, of course. So, wow, I couldn't be more excited. That's awesome. Really, really cool talents. The level 7 stuff's sort of boring to me. I think Live by the Sword's amazing in practice, but not all that fun. But everything else is really well designed and pretty cool. So let's move on to level 13. For here we've got banners, seemingly. Banner of Stormwind. 45-second cooldown. Activate to place a banner that grants 25% increased movement speed to nearby allied heroes. So what does this look like? Pretty huge circle there. It's really nice, and you get movement speed. That's cool. It's going to be good for chasing or retreating. So implications both offensively and defensively, and across both of your primary roles. And those are up every 45 seconds. There's also the Banner of Ironforge. Activate to place banner that grants resistance to nearby allied heroes, reducing damage taken. Same duration, same cooldown. Okay, so really defensive there. And finally, the Banner of Dalaran. Activate to place a banner that grants 20% increased ability power to nearby allied heroes. Alright, so a mage buff there. Probably won't really help Varian himself all that much, but if you've got like a Jaina on your team, or Kel'Thas, or Li Ming, or whoever, Banner of Dalaran could really help out and make them a huge threat. So this is going to be a tough choice, and it's going to be totally dependent upon who's on your team, I think. Maybe even more so than what role you're trying to play personally. I mean, movement speed is always kind of a safe bet, just because movement speed is important, whether it's in a team fight, whether it's in a chase or an escape. Like, there's always applications. Resistant 2 is just good for team fights if you pick a spot to stand, and that's where the fight's going to be, whether it's on a tribute or a capture point of some sort. This is going to do work, but so is Banner of Dalaran. So just, is your team aggressive? Are you more defensive? Are you about poke and sustain? Are you about burst? All of those questions are going to have to be answered. If you're more about burst and like getting in and ending a fight quickly, Banner of Dalaran probably makes sense. If you're more of a poke or sustain composition that wants to defend against an early rush from your opponent, Banner of Ironforge makes sense. You know, on certain maps, Banner of Stormwind too. So all three of these are good. It's a fun little design and something unique for Varian to do. I like it a lot. Moving on to level 16, it is Juggernaut. Increase the charge damage. In fact, charge deals bonus damage here is equal to 6% of their maximum health. Well, I love charge, particularly if you get the cooldown, which we have, but I'm not sure why the cooldown. Oh, okay. It doesn't show it on the tooltip, of course, but it's still 6 seconds, you can see. So every 6 seconds, you get to chunk somebody for 6% of their health. That's actually pretty good, especially against Cho'Gall or any, high health tanky compositions. This could really start to do work. So I like that a lot. There's also Mortal Strike. Heroes hit by Heroic Strike receive 40% reduced healing for 4 seconds. That's intriguing too. If you stick to somebody and they're reliant on like a Lieutenant Morales or really big heals from Malfurion or something, this could completely shut that out, because I think Varian's going to be halfway decent at sticking to a target and applying that Mortal Strike pretty consistently, or excuse me, the Heroic Strike pretty consistently, which means once he gets on that target and any teammates come to help and he reduces the healing they receive, there's going to be very little the enemy team can actually do to save them if you pick this talent. So if they have like a really, really punishing healer like Malfurion, Lieutenant Morales, somebody that's really sustain healing, or Rhaegar ultimate that you're trying to shut out perhaps, and there's a high priority target that you absolutely want to take out of the fight right at the start, I think Mortal Strike is going to be good to do that. And then finally there's Shattering Throw. Activate to throw a sword that deals 110 damage to the target and up to 3,070 bonus damage to their shields. And passively, basic attacks deal 200% bonus damage to shields. So this is cool. This is a straight up shield breaking talent. It is all about, if they have that Tassadar or Tanis, somebody that's a shield hero, this will absolutely cut through them, which is not something we've seen before, and that's pretty awesome. So here you have answers to like tanky compositions, here you have answers to healers, and here you have an answer to, tanks with shields or healers with shields as well. So that's awesome. 3,000 bonus damage to their shields if this hits the target. So it's just a targeted ability. It's going to eat through some shields. That's awesome. Tassadar's beware, or Tanis's beware, Johanna beware. Any hero that's reliant on shields. This is going to absolutely murder Johanna's. That's awesome. Really cool. Typically I think I'd pick Juggernaut here just for the consistency, but clearly each of these have applications in the right scenarios. So look to those as needed. And then finally we're on to level 20. Looks like we've got heroic upgrades, but also some passives. So let's start here with Frenzy. Twin Blades of Fury, which I think is our level 10 passive we chose, increases Varian's attack speed by an additional 15%, and basic attacks increases movement speed by an additional 10%. So I'm not sure you can go wrong here. It's just a nice passive buff. He is hammering right now. Look at that. That's nuts. If we had the Colossus Smash, man, imagine that world, but unfortunately it doesn't work that way. Still, that's really scary, because look how fast he's moving too. That's really, really fun. What a cool playstyle. There's also Glory to the Alliance. Banner now also increases the health regeneration of all healing received. Oh no, health regeneration and all healing received for nearby allied heroes by 50%, and the cooldown is reduced by 20 seconds. So this is cool, sort of a mega healing totem, I guess. I'm not really sure healing totem's good, particularly level 20. I mean, yeah, it's better than healing totem. Obviously, it has some applications, just because the cooldown is in and of itself pretty powerful. If you're in an organized team and you're constantly fighting on Sky Temple, temples, or whatever, this could work. I don't think it's probably going to be quite as strong as other options, though, that we'll see soon. There's also Demoralizing Shout, 25-second cooldown. Activates to demoralize nearby enemy heroes, reducing damage they deal by 25% for 5 seconds. So that's like identical to the World of Warcraft ability, and it's not bad. It's another, if it's a team that really likes to dive you or commit to fights really hard, this could shut them out. It could deny their big early burst, and between that and perhaps the resistant banner, you could just weather that initial storm and win a game. If you're the more aggressive team, you probably don't need something like this. It's probably more about defending and turtling up. There's also a Vigilance. Being hit by a hero, basic attack reduces the cooldown of taunt by 1 second. That's pretty neat. That's going to force enemy teams to really think about how they attack you and how they engage in fights, because you're going to taunt them and they're going to hit you a few times, and it's going to be reducing the cooldown on that taunt pretty rapidly. I don't know, though, that this is really all that good, because how often are you going to want to taunt? And once enemies pick up on this, they're probably not going to focus through you at all. So the feedback loop of taunting into basic attacks into taunting into basic attacks will be less likely as enemies become accustomed to this. I doubt Vigilance is actually going to be all that good, although I'd love to be proven wrong. And then finally there's Master at Arms. Colossus Smash affects all enemies near the target, and its cooldown is reduced by 10 seconds. The cooldown reduction is really nice, because that just means you can do it every 10 seconds, which is cool. But I don't really know that... I guess it's actually pretty good. The way this reads, right, it does 400 damage and makes them vulnerable for 3 seconds. So I suppose if you could hit that on the entire enemy team, you'd be pretty happy, because it'd not only be a decent AoE damage effect, but also you'd just be making them vulnerable basically 33% of the time, because it lasts for 3 seconds, and you can do it every 10 seconds after the cooldown reduction here, so that's like a 33% uptime on vulnerability. So if it's chaotic fights or people aren't focusing damage very well, this could give you an edge. But in organized teams where you focus damage, really just the single target vulnerability should be enough pretty regularly. So I'm not really sure this works. I guess if you're going with the Colossus Smash build, it might be the best option you have available at level 20 as an offensive buff. So probably have to go that. Now, all that said, man, it's amazing how few bad talents there are for Varian. Usually there's like stinker talents. You're like, oh, that's awful, or oh, that's an easy pass. This is a really well-designed kit that, man, it offers a ton of flexibility, a lot of decisions, and a lot of branches to consider. Some really cool internal synergies within certain talents from tier to tier. So it feels to me like there's going to be 2 or 3 really powerful different ways to play Varian, and you're going to need to have each of those in your arsenal, and plan to play him a certain way sometimes, but also be flexible enough to adapt to compositions and counter your opponents. And I think if you're good in that regard and you understand every option he has and aren't scared to utilize those in the right scenarios, that Varian is going to be sort of the meta breaker hero. He's just going to be able to stop whatever your opponents are trying to do, whether that's healing or whether that's shielding, whether that's burst damage, whether that's sustain and poke. it kind of feels like Varian has a tool to answer any of that. So he's perfect for people who are very good at the game and understand how all those pieces of the puzzle fit together. And I have a feeling he's going to be pretty good as long as the numbers are there. It's always hard to tell with numbers and play style, just how those fit together. But with the right kind of tweaking for good players, it feels like Varian's going to be an awesome option. And probably a good tank and probably a good assassin at that as well. So as far as I'm concerned, A+ hero. I love the fantasy. I love the design. I love the names and style of the abilities. I love the flexibility. So Varian is certainly going to be an easy instant purchase for me, and I can't actually wait to play this guy in some real games. So that's going to wrap it up for my first look at Varian Wrynn. If you have any thoughts, comments, or questions, please do leave them below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.